ridiculous bullshit?
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. Kevin McCarthy's continued attempt to become Speaker of the House continues at this hour. The House is expected to take another vote late tonight. You'll see it live here on Fox, of course. But first, an anniversary. 2 years ago today, a Capitol Hill police officer called Michael Byrd shot an unarmed woman in the neck. At the time of that killing, Byrd had a documented history of gross negligence with a firearm. He left a loaded Glock pistol in a public men's room at the Capitol.
Oh my God! Wow!
Which for a law enforcement official is a firing offense. But for some reason, Michael Byrd was still in the force that day. The woman he killed was called Ashley Babbitt. Babbitt was a married 14-year veteran of the U.S. military. She ran a pool cleaning company with her husband in San Diego. Physically, she was tiny. She was also unarmed. Michael Byrd later admitted he had no indication at all that Babbitt was carrying a weapon. She posed no visible threat. He killed her anyway.
Huh?
Under normal circumstances, Byrd would have been fired immediately and charged with murder, which he clearly committed. But that's not what happened. After doing essentially no investigation into the shooting, Nancy Pelosi's congressional police force declared Byrd a national hero, and the media strongly agreed. Byrd went on television to accept accolades and to complain about racism. He was never punished for killing Ashley Babbitt. He was rewarded for it. Ashley Babbitt's mother, meanwhile, got a very different sort of treatment. Babbitt's mother was arrested today in Washington
Tender and mild.
By the Capitol Police. Her crime? Trying to hold a memorial service for her daughter. 2 years later, it's clear that Ashley Babbitt her death is by far the most significant thing that happened at the U.S. Capitol building that day. But at the same time, it is the least talked about event of January 6th.
Bruh.
Why is that? Well, because the facts about what actually happened on January 6th disrupt the lies, what they've told you happened on January 6th.
What?
And those lies have proven very useful to the Biden administration and to permanent Washington. On the basis of a wholly created myth about what happened that day, the Biden Pentagon conducted an unprecedented political purge of the entire U.S. military. The FBI and various intel agencies increased their control over the American media. And most obviously, the DOJ has been allowed to prosecute and jail hundreds of nonviolent political protesters whose crime was having the wrong opinions. Lies about January 6th, which have been relentless, have enabled some of the most unscrupulous people in our country to make a mockery of our Bill of Rights and to steal our core freedoms. So they can't talk about Ashley Babbitt. Talking about Ashley Babbitt makes it very clear who the real culprits are and who the real threats to this country continue to be. And they're not the January 6th protesters. So instead, they lie about what happened that day, and they do it in the boldest possible ways, without shame and with maximum aggression. Here's Hakeem Jeffries, leader of the Democrats in the House, telling you that 5 police officers were killed on January 6th, when in fact the real total is 0.
We are gathered here to honor their memory and acknowledge with deep gratitude the tremendous bravery of the hundreds of officers who defended us at this citadel of democracy that fateful day. As a result of the events,
oh snap,
on January 6th, the lives of 5 heroic officers were lost.
5 heroic officers were lost, he said. It's almost impossible to believe that adults could stand behind him as he said that. Because everyone in the picture you just saw knows that is not true. It's not a stilted interpretation of events. It's a flat-out lie. No police officers were killed on January 6th. Wow. Period. Ashley Babbitt was killed on January 6th. But chances are your grandchildren will not know that because history will likely record the lie you just heard as true, simply because it's been repeated so often. Everyone in authority has said the same thing in unison for 2 solid years. As our thoroughly dishonest Attorney General recently put it, quote, "We will never forget the 5 officers who responded selflessly on January 6th and who have since lost their lives." His boss, Joe Biden, repeated that lie today from the White House.
Buckle up, baby. Are you kidding me?
These people and the people representing those who couldn't be here because they gave their lives for this is incredibly consequential. And that's not political talk, that's historical fact.
That's historical fact, says Joe Biden, as he manufactures history, as he tells lies. They've been doing this, telling these same lies since the very first day. Wow. January 6th, 2021. Almost like it was a coordinated operation. Remember when they told you that Officer Brian Sicknick, was beaten to death with a fire extinguisher?
Officer Sicknick died after being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher.
You had one job to do.
Sicknick died after being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher.
Officer Brian Sicknick died after being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher during the hours-long attack.
They beat a Capitol Police officer to death with a fire extinguisher.
That's a lie.
Officer Brian Sicknick died after being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher during the fight.
He died at the age of 42 after he was bludgeoned with a fire extinguisher.
That's not true. And in the end, thanks to the medical examiner in the District of Columbia, we learned the fact, which is that Brian Sicknick died of a stroke well after the January 6th protests. He was not beaten to death with a fire extinguisher. But that did not stop their lying or even slow them down. Joe Biden just awarded one of this country's highest civilian honors, the Presidential Citizens Medal.
What? Yes!
To officers working on January 6th. And that would include the officers who opened the doors of the Capitol building to the so-called insurrectionists. The officers who let them inside and then were rewarded for it by the President of the United States. What's going on here, you may wonder? Well, don't ask. You're not allowed to know what's going on here. Nor can you know about the very obvious clandestine role of federal agencies that encouraged the events of January 6th.
Whoa!
That happened, but its details have never been explained. A lot has still not been explained from that day, despite a committee that was impaneled for more than a year. For example, you remember the pipe bomber who planted explosives outside the Democratic National Committee?
Oh, that's a lot of damage.
Well, those explosives, it turns out, were under a bench at the same moment that Kamala Harris, who had Secret Service protection with her, who swept the building, was there.
Yes! That's awesome.
So how did the U.S. Secret Service miss a bomb sitting in plain sight during its security sweep? Well, we can't answer that because the FBI still, to this day, refuses to release all the security footage. Why? What's going on here? Almost unique among media outlets, Revolver News asked that question.
The pipe bomber even looks at camera to head on, for some reason. It's very frustrating, because we can't see the moment the pipe bomber plants the pipe bomb, but the FBI can. That's because the whole scene should be captured on camera 1 as well, and much more clearly than camera 2. Camera 1 has a clear shot of both benches. If the FBI released the full tape from camera 1, we could see the pipe bomber planting the bomb.
So somebody planted bombs outside the headquarters of this country's two main political parties. That would seem to be a big story, and yet no one ever mentions it again, including the FBI.
Oh my God.
In fact, the Bureau won't disclose any information about the suspect, not his height, weight, shoe size, anything. So if they wanted to catch this person, wouldn't they be telling you all they can about who it is? But they're not. Why aren't they? And what was Kamala Harris doing there? Why did she lie about being there? We can't answer those questions. We should be able to. Nor does anyone in authority want to talk about Ray Epps. Ray Epps, of course, is the man who was caught on tape encouraging the crowd outside the Capitol, both on January 5th and 6th, to commit felonies by rushing inside. Now, what's interesting is that the January 6th committee, under public pressure, did in the end interview Ray Epps. Now, we don't have all of the committee's records about that interview. We should, but we don't. But some have been released, and what they tell is a remarkable story. In the testimony that we have, the committee coaches Ray Epps on how to answer questions.
I heard that. I wish I didn't hear that, but I just heard that.
About his involvement. Quote, I was in the front with a few others. I also orchestrated it. I helped get people there. End quote. Now, Epps admitted that in a text message to a relative on January 6th. He's admitting crimes. He's never been even charged for those crimes. But what's so fascinating is that when those facts came up in his interview with the committee, someone on the committee responds this way, and we're quoting, "I just want to understand a little more your use of the word orchestrated." Damn! It sounds to me like at this point, when you sent this text, you had turned away in part because of seeing some things that you didn't agree with. Is that right? Like when you sent this, you were already on your way from the Capitol because of concerns of people taking it in a different direction. Is that the most leading question ever asked in the history of a congressional hearing? Probably. And the whole interview goes on like this. Keep in mind, Ray Epps is one of the only people.
What an idiot! Oh, what a loser!
Caught on camera that day encouraging others to break the law. He's one of the only ones. And yet he's never been charged. And the January 6th committee was on his side. Why was the committee and its members working so hard to help Ray Epps? Now, in his interview with the committee, Ray Epps said he didn't work for law enforcement. Law enforcement, in a very specifically worded answer, clearly thought through ahead of time. The question is, did Ray Epps work or have any contact with any government agency? Did he talk about January 6th before it happened with any employee of the U.S. government? We don't know. We do know that 2 years after January 6th, long after an awful lot of other people have gone to jail for walking around the Capitol building, Ray Epps is still a free man. He's never been charged, much less imprisoned in solitary confinement like so many others.
Who does that?
Why is that? Well, let's just stop lying. At this point, it's pretty obvious why that is. But of course, they're still lying about it.
I don't get it.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Here is the main thing you need to know about Joe Biden. He is 80 years old, rather. He was born in 1942 in the first half of the last century. The year Biden was born, only 36% of American households had a telephone. Nearly half of them did not have indoor plumbing. Joe Biden turned 80 last November. This fall, he will be 81. If Biden were to serve a second full term as president, he would be 86 years old, in other words, 4 years from 90. These are not trivial facts about Joe Biden. These are the central facts of Joe Biden's life. Joe Biden's age defines him, and all of us. That's true for every person. Age is just a number, you will hear people say, but they are lying to themselves. Age is more than a number. Age is an expression of the core biological reality of human existence, which is that at some point it comes to a close. Age is the way that we chart our progression from birth to death as we pass from this world, as billions before us have, and are replaced by others. That used to be called the cycle of life. No one has ever changed it. No one ever will. So our choice is between accepting a reality we cannot alter or denying that reality even exists. The Democratic Party has chosen the latter. Tomorrow is March 1st. That means a year from today, we'll be in the middle of presidential primary season. Joe Biden has given every indication that he plans to participate in that and that his party is firmly behind him. The DNC has already changed the primary calendar to make South Carolina, which is a machine state where the outcome can easily be scripted, the very first contest. And that was not an accident. It was done. It was changed to help Joe Biden win.
Hello there.
Biden says he's strongly considering running again. Biden's wife, of course, says she very much hopes he will run. And most tellingly of all, no mainstream Democrat has announced a run against him. So as of tonight, Joe Biden is in the race for the Democratic nomination, and as of tonight, he will get the nomination. And that's just amazing if you think about it. Joe Biden would be 82 years old on Inauguration Day. That is 8 years older than the average life expectancy for men in this country. So virtually everyone in his high school class will be gone by then, but Joe Biden will be just beginning his second term as president of the United States. Would that be healthy for America? Would it be healthy for Joe Biden?
Nice.
Of course not. It's awful. 82-year-old men should not be running countries. They're not strong enough mentally or physically. Everybody knows that, very much including any 82-year-old man you ask. The people around Joe Biden certainly know that. How could they not know that? They watch him, and you do too. Here's Joe Biden in Warsaw, Poland, just last week.
The questions we faced were as simple as they were profound. Would we respond? Or would we look the other way? Would we be strong? Or would we be weak? Would all of our allies, would be united or divided?
So we play clips like that a million times for you over the past few years. We could play a million more because Joe Biden talks like that every day.
Now this is pod racing.
At this point, it's how he talks. Joe Biden is losing his ability to speak. That's not a secret. It's not something you learn from our confidential sources and are bringing to you for the first time tonight exclusively.
Oh my God!
That is obvious to the entire world. And you'll probably sound like that too if you make it to Joe Biden's age. We will also. It's not weird. It's natural. It's not an attack on Joe Biden, hardly. It's an observation. But because it's natural, we have been commanded to ignore it. Don Lemon got suspended from his show at CNN recently for suggesting that a presidential candidate in her 50s was, quote, past her prime. And that's odd, really.
Boom, bitch! Bang!
As a factual matter, what Don Lemon said is true. People in their 50s are literally, certainly physically, past their prime. That's a fact. Take it from someone who's 53. So why was that such a controversial point? Of all the demented things that Don Lemon has said over the years, noticing somebody's age is what blows up his career? Yes. Because that simple, commonplace observation, people weaken with age, points to a power that will forever remain beyond human authority, which is the power to control time.
Oh, that was gross!
No matter how rich we are, we cannot prevent ourselves from getting older. We can buy Botox and hair plugs and facelifts. Joe Biden has bought all of that. But in the end, we degrade anyway because we are not God.
BB-8, hold on!
Accepting this fact that we are not God, working within the preordained limits of nature, is the key to balance and happiness in this human life. Ignoring that fact leads to insanity, or in the case of modern America, it leads to the trans agenda and climate theology.
Blah, 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 blah.
If you asked 100 honest people to name the things that human beings cannot control, most would list biological sex and the weather. You can't decide whether you're a boy or a girl. You are what you are born. Sorry. And nobody, try as we might, can make a sunny day. You don't manufacture it, you receive it. A sunny day either happens or it doesn't. It's not up to you. At best, we can try to predict the weather. We cannot determine the weather. Since the dawn of time, that has been so obvious that almost nobody's ever mentioned it.
No, you are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
But saying it out loud is now heresy. And that's because our leadership class is at open war with nature. Nature is the final limit to their power, and so they hate it. They tell us they're in charge of human biology, even of DNA. Trans women are women, they screech. Meet our Lady Admiral. They brag about how they now control the weather. Too hot for you? Hold on, we'll change that with the Green New Deal. And then they tell us, of course, that age no longer matters. Joe Biden may live forever. We've got AI now. It's all a ridiculous fantasy. They have no such power. They can't even keep the electrical grid running in the state of California. And on some level, they know that. They know how limited they are, which is why they become so hysterical in the face of physical reality, because it's a reminder of their limits. Do you remember this fall when that NBC reporter, a woman called Dasha Burns, dared to point out that John Fetterman's stroke had damaged him? Well, of course it had damaged him. Everyone could see it had damaged him. But to Fetterman's wife and the rest of the Democratic establishment and the rest of the press corps,
Oh my God.
saying something like that out loud was more offensive than any obscenity. Here's an outraged Mrs. Fetterman.
What a disservice that she did to not only my husband, but to anyone facing a disability and working through it. And I don't know how there were not consequences, right? I mean, there are consequences for folks in these positions who are any of the isms. I mean, she was ableist.
Oh my God.
Well, she's an ableist, howled Giselle Fetterman, because someone had correctly pointed out that her husband was no longer able because he had a stroke. In other words, reality intruded on Mrs. Fetterman's fantasy, and therefore reality itself had to be shouted down and destroyed.
Bing, bing, bong, bing, bong.
Wallet, please select Iseva. Enter your full name or mobile name. यहाँ हाल्नु त तपाईँको enter your full name भनेर proceed to payment गर्नु न भयो अब यहाँ हाल्नु आइडी इसिराको आइडी लगइन पासवर्ड हाल्नु लगइन पासवर्ड थाहा छैन ए अनि के थाहा हुन्छ नम्बर र पासवर्ड हाल्नु न एमपिआइएन इसिराको आइडीको पासवर्ड नम्बर छ होला उ तपाईको नम्बर छ हाल्नु त नम्बर तपाईको नम्बर के छ मोबाइलमा पासवर्ड चाहिँ थाहा छैन नि त पासवर्ड त चेन्ज गर्दा भइहाल्छ नि फेरि थाहा छैन पासवर्ड फरवर्ड गरेर गर्नु त हुन्छ होला पासवर्ड जानु त के भयो पासवर्ड हाल In this video, we can see that TuckerCarlson exposed Joe Biden, and recently we has got some of the incidents that in the Joe Biden has to pull in by, it's the Donald Trump has been attacked by the gun in the press conference in the stadium, and police protect him very quickly, and the tear gas involves, and there is training measurements in the just in the case in the threats to the democrats, so we can cool that enjoy the fruits and for the violence and the skill that the cats and the rest and the Jonathan